and we've also shared the flyers. We have Chandeep Chhabra, and he's going to be sharing with us on eating Excel and Power Query tips. So it's something that I'm looking forward to learning a lot more on, because these are the aspects of Excel that one can gain a lot of valuable productivity skills, and not so common. I don't think we've had anyone talk about something close to this, so it's something unique. So if can you move to the next slide? Maybe he's not even hearing me. Okay, good. Okay, yeah, then the next slide. So just a quick two things to mention before I call him up. And by the way, Chandeep, I forgot to tell you, well, because of the timing anyway, towards the end, we'll ask you two questions about your journey, how you started, you know, and then also your advice for people who are new into this space. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. Okay, good. So just a quick one about the people behind this, so that you can be aware. It's UrBizEdge. We are a data analysis company, and we're into solutions and training. And for about a year plus now, we've been the one trying our best to ensure that we get us wonderful speakers across the world. So in case you need any training in the Power BI, Excel, or financial modeling, we'll be very, very glad. So if I in the next one, so that I can now properly introduce the speaker. Okay. So Chandeep is a consultant and trainer. He helps companies large and small with creating and automating their dashboards, Excel reports, and into process automations. He used to be a financial analyst, and he's also an entrepreneur. He's a mixture of like all the high power spaces, you know, entrepreneur with finance and then BI. So I'm sure you'll find a lot of nuggets and wonderful things to learn from him if you go on his blog. And also he has a YouTube channel, but I think if you go on his blog, you'll be able to access everything, and also you can connect with him on LinkedIn. So we're going to share his blog link. As for LinkedIn, I think it's easy. Or what do you think? If they just type your name in, will it be only your name that will come up?
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully.
Well, just look at
I believe you're going to hit the blog first.
Okay, blog is better. Okay, so we'll share the blog
one.
And
then
when you type his name, go on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so when you type his name on LinkedIn, just make sure you look at the face. So if it looks like his face, then that's him. So I think that would be the best way. So over to you, Chandeep, then. So the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me here. And I'm glad to be, speaking at this event of yours. It's nice when people call people over to kind of share things that they have learned, and the learning kind of spreads around the world. Anybody from India who's joined in today? Anybody from India?
I think you can also share your screen. I see a couple. I see Naveen. I see Raj Kumar.
Okay. For all the Indian folks, you guys aren't watching the match. There's India versus New Zealand today. India's batting. I'm surprised that you're not watching the match and just maybe spending it.
You must love Excel and data analysis.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you must be really interested in learning Excel. So, anyways.
I wish you guys success, like you win.
Yeah, just a game. I mean, it's for entertainment, so it's just a game. I just like watching cricket, so that's it. So I'm surprised that that's a very popular game in India, and I thought that nobody's from India is going to turn up apart from me because I'm the speaker today. So yeah, but I'm glad that people have come in from India as well. Okay, so do I have the permission to share the screen here?
Yes, you can. Please do share your screen.
I don't like a lot of slides, so I'm just going to maybe take you through quickly, not really a slide, but just a simple picture I have prepared with a photo of mine. That's it. I mean, that's the only slide that I have. So I'm sure you know my name. My name is Chandeep Chhabra, and at the moment I stay in Dubai with my family. And for the last 8 odd years since the time I started business, I was in India. I started and grew the business in India, and then in COVID, I decided to move to Dubai and start maybe one more operations here in Dubai. Apart from the work that I do in India, a very large part of my work is training corporations and companies and doing consulting work for them. With whatever time is left, I tend to spend that time on creating videos and some YouTube stuff and some online courses stuff, that sort of stuff. And I only started to focus on YouTube, I think, during the COVID. Before that, I was just traveling and I could not really focus on YouTube, and the channel grew a bit and got to meet a lot of people, and I'm here speaking to you guys. I have a blog. You can see that kudli.co.in. If you just Google search my name, you will probably get to my blog. Also, you'll get to my YouTube channel. You can also search for Kudli or Chandeep. You'll probably get to my YouTube channel. Now, of all these months that I have been creating videos, I have essentially been speaking about the ETL capabilities of Power Query and the data modeling and tax calculation capabilities of Power BI. And before that, I was very heavily working with spreadsheets, Excel. Like, it was my go-to tool for doing anything close to working with data, be it automating stuff, a bit of VBA, writing formulas, and creating spreadsheets and stuff. So I wanted to take a step back, and I wanted to do a mixed session today and talk about Power Query a bit, and talk about some very interesting Excel tricks as well. Now, I have got 5 tricks for you. Hopefully, I should be able to cover all of the 5 tricks in the given amount of time that we have. So I don't really want to waste any more time, and I quickly want to get started with the first trick. A lot of times, when you work with data, you're going to get cross-tabulated data sets. And if you take a look at the data on the screen, we have one side, we have the product name A, B, C, D, E, and F, just dummy products, and the other side, we have the months here. Now, this is a classic cross-tabulated data. In technical terms, you can also call this pivoted data, right? The first thing that I'd like to talk about is that if you get such data sets, now they can be more complicated versions of cross-tabulations and data sets that appear this way, but just wanted to help everybody understand that how do you understand that this is the data which is a cross-tabulated or a pivoted data in the first place. Now, whenever you're working with data and to refer to any number, so let's just say that I pick up this number, which is 191, and to be able to understand this number, I have to look in 2 directions. That means I have to look up to take a look at what month is it, and I have to take a look at left to what product name is it. I am actually referring to a cross-tabulated data. Now, if you're unlucky, which you might be in a lot of cases, you could have multiple layers of cross-tabulation as well. That means these 3 months could also perhaps be blocked as or grouped as Q1 with a merge cell on the top. Who knows? And maybe there could be another merge cell here, which could maybe classify the product class or something like that. So this may be the high class products, right? So there could be multiple levels of cross-tabulation of the data as well. But as of now, we are simply talking about single level cross-tabulation. That means you have one dimension of value here and the other dimension of the value here. So whenever you have to take a look at the number and you have to look at 2 different ways, one on the top, one on the left, that means you are dealing with a cross-tabulated data. Now, it's very hard to analyze this particular data because one of the dimension of the data, which is very important, which should be actually in a single column in multiple rows, is there in different columns right here. If you are already working with Power Query, I'm sure everybody knows of the solution. You can actually unpivot this data. Cool, and sure. But maybe 5–10% of the times, I have still seen companies and organizations that work with Excel 2007, which do not have the exposure of Power Query. So if you are stuck with the very old versions of Excel, how would you then unpivot the data? So I'm going to actually talk about an easy Excel trick that you can use to unpivot the data. Before I start talking about this trick, I learned this trick from a book. It's called a long while ago. I read this about a few years ago. It was called Excel Out of the Box. It was written by Bob Ulmus. It's a phenomenal book with a lot of tricks on VBA, Excel, and that sort of stuff. And if you get a chance to read that, please go read that. It's a very, very good book. Anyways, so from that, here comes the trick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start to make a pivot table from this particular data. Remember that I have to unpivot the data. And before even I start to unpivot the data, for the people who don't understand what do unpivoting actually means, here is a simple, explanation of what am I trying to achieve right here. So as an output, I'd like to get 3 columns of data. So I'd like to have one column as product, the other column as the month, and the third column as the value. And let's just say that for every single number, I'd like to create a row for that number. So let's just say that if we pick up 157, I write 157 manually right here. I write the month of Jan 2021. I write the name of the product A. And then for the next number, which is 112, I'm again going to write this. I'm going to write Jan, and I'm going to write the name of the product, which is product B. So that's the data set that I'm trying to create, a row for every single number. And I'm trying to show you a pivot table trick to do that. OK. Let's just keep this in mind for a while so that we can map our output to what I have created as a sample output. And let's just see, do we get this right or not? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a pivot table from this particular data. Generally speaking, if you ask any millennial who's been working with Excel for a short amount of time, probably a few years, the shortcut that he or she would probably know of to create a pivot table is Alt-NV. Right, and you can actually create a pivot table, or you can probably go to the insert tab and then you can create a pivot table. This pivot table is the modern pivot table, which is actually optimized to create better pivot tables. But there was an old pivot table wizard, which is also available in Excel, that was available in Excel 2003. We're going to use that so that we can actually do some unpivoting of the data. So I'm not going to use the shortcut Alt-NV. I'm instead going to use the shortcut Alt-D and P. Maybe I can just write that here, Alt-D and P to invoke the old pivot table wizard. So I'm just going to select the data, Alt-D-P. Here's some echo of my own voice. OK, and I get the pivot table wizard to have multiple consolidation ranges. Pivot table is what I'd like to create. Say next. Single page field is fine. It says, hey, what is the range for which you'd like to create a pivot table? I can click on add. Sorry, I can first select the range, so I can just pick up this particular range. I can click on add, click on next, and then I can just put the pivot table on a new worksheet. Click on finish, and I do get a pivot table. Now, if you take a look at this pivot table, it's nothing but just a pivot table. There is nothing so special about it. But in this particular pivot table, I'm sure everybody knows if you actually double click on any particular value, it opens up the details of that particular pivot table. I'm sure everybody knows that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on the grand total of this particular pivot table. And what this is going to do is this is going to throw the data in actually an unpivoted format. And I can just actually work with the data. So here is the first column, which is nothing but the products. So 6 products that we had it, A, B, C, D, and F. And if you wish, you can actually change the name of this. So I can call this as product. I can call this as month. I can call this as value. This is already a value. And page 1 is something which is nothing but we selected only one multiple consolidation ranges. And this is the page 1 for that. I can actually delete this particular part. So this is the 3 columnar pivot table that I have received, and the data is actually unpivoted. If you match it with what I wanted to create, it's precisely what I wanted to create. So if I just go back on sheet number 1, take a look at this is what I wanted to create. I take it back right here, and this is exactly what I wanted to create as an output. So it's a very nice way, very nifty way of unpivoting the data using Microsoft Excel, right? OK, let's just actually move on to trick number 2. About 2 years ago, I did some Excel training for helping raising some COVID funds. That was just like a charitable event that we did. A couple of good people and also savvy people around the world came together and they created an Excel course that people bought, and all of the funds that we collected from that went to COVID-19. And that was actually a good event. And we also got the access for the event. Like everybody who trained for the event also got the access to take a look at the videos for the event. And in that particular course, I actually learned this trick from a gentleman that I cannot really remember the name of it, but it was a pretty phenomenal trick. So please take a look at it. Now, everybody knows that the way that you actually sum a range is nothing but you either write a sum function right here and you pick up this particular column and you press enter, or maybe people familiar with shortcuts can also not write, but press the shortcut alt equals to, and then you can create the sum range right here. If you want to go a little more savvy, what you can actually do is select the 3 columns together, leave 1 row empty at the bottom, and then once the row is empty at the bottom, you can then press the shortcut alt equals to, and the sum function actually appears right here. Everybody knows that. There is no problem with that. It's very standard stuff. Now, here comes the problem. Let's just say that I'm probably sending this off to somebody and I create a totals row at the bottom. And I'm going to maybe add a few rows here and perhaps add a few more products. But what I do is I, on purpose, maybe add another product called M, and I add the values after leaving 1 row at the bottom. So I just add 100, 100, and then 100. And you can see that the totals do not update because the range did not really skip the last cell, which is row number 7 here, and did not automatically move or shift to row number 8 or row number 9, as in when the data is added. Now, if you're actually creating financial models or spreadsheets that you'd like to send it off to somebody, it can be a very handy trick that I'm going to share with you, which is where the range can automatically expand as in when you move the formula down, right? Very, very helpful for, general aggregations, summing up where you want to take a look at all the rows on the top, which have left over previously. So how do you do that? Creating dynamic ranges in Excel is a pretty discussed topic on the internet. And if you go take a look at it on the internet, you're going to find a lot of articles using indirect index offset functions to be able to expand the range automatically using the cell naming technique. We're going to actually do something similar, but I'm not going to do any of the sophistication of the. I'm just going to play a ridiculously simple trick. So please take a look. Understand what exactly am I going to do, you actually need to understand 2 things. The problem, which is where I'm trying to expand the range of the sum and move the last value to the last cell, whichever the last cell is. That's the problem. And the solution is going to come from a technique in Excel, which is called cell naming. Now, there exists a cell naming in Excel. That means instead of referring the cell address, I can also perhaps name a cell and then refer back to that cell. So that's called cell naming. Very simple example, if I have to communicate that to you. So let's just say that this is cell E1, and I can click here. I can go over to the name box here, and I can just call the cell anything. Maybe I can call the cell my name, Chandeep, right? Press enter. And now this cell, which is the cell E1, is actually named as Chandeep. What this means is I could actually use this particular cell naming technique in my formula, and I can start to write equals to Chandeep and press enter. Because this cell is blank, it gives me nothing. If I wrote a value in this cell, maybe a number, it would give me just a number, or even a text, it would actually give me a text. This is called cell naming. If I have to explain to you very, very simply. Anyways, now let's just take a look at how can we make this cell naming technique a slightly more sophisticated and start to use that to solve this particular problem. I'm going to pick up any cell for that matter on the spreadsheet and then open up the cell naming manager. Now, when you provide names to your cells in Excel, all the names get stored at a place which is called the name manager in Excel. Where do you access that? So if you actually go over to the formulas tab, in the formulas tab, you have something like a name manager, which is where you're going to get the access to all the names that you provide in the spreadsheet. And right now, I named the cell as Chandeep. I deleted that cell, so it's just giving me the ref error. I can delete it. And this is where I'm going to get all the names that I'm going to give into my spreadsheet. Any which ways, I'm going to start to work with the name manager. What do I do in the name manager? I'm going to click on the new and start to create a new name. I'm going to name this cell as the previous cell. Right? And then it says that, hey, OK, fine. You're currently working in this particular cell and you're trying to name this as the previous cell, and the address of the cell is sheet 2 E7. That's the address of this particular cell. Now you can see that the cell naming is absolutely referenced. That means E has a dollar and 7 has a dollar. I'm assuming that everybody knows the dollar signs for absolute and relative cell referencing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to say that this absolute referencing is not going to work for me because I'd like to refer to the previous cell, staying in the current cell. So I will cancel this part out, the entire thing. I'm going to start writing an exclamation mark, and I'm going to start to write E6, not E7, right? So I'm essentially trying to say that if I'm working in the current cell, then I'm not naming the current cell. Essentially, I'm naming the previous cell, which is E6. Now, because E6 is not referenced absolutely, there are no dollar signs. That means that the previous cell is actually going to work for any cell in the entire spreadsheet. I could be working on this particular cell, and I could be naming the previous cell as this cell. So let's just take a look at how this works. But two things of importance: the name is previous cell, and the address is no dollar signs, exclamation mark, and the previous cell address, which is E6. I can actually click on OK and close this box. I can say close. And now if I just go and say equals to previous cell, I actually can just refer to the previous cell like that. So if I just write 100 here, I get 100. If I happen to write ABC here, I'm going to get ABC. This is nothing but previous cell. And the surprising thing is that the previous cell can be used anywhere. Now previous cell becomes here, this becomes 100, this actually becomes 100. So now this is good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start to use that previous cell technique in my sum function. So what do? I go over to the formula. In the formula, if you take a look at the formula says, hey, the range is going to start with B2. Let me just actually delete a couple of cells. OK, so my formula says that the range is going to start with B2 right here. This is good. That means my range is starting at the position that I would want to start it at. OK. But my range is actually ending at B7. So I'm going to say that the range is not going to be ending at B7, but the range is going to be ending at the previous cell. So I'm just going to modify this particular formula, cancel that and write previous cell and close the box. Now I commit to the formula and press enter. The range is automatically going to come to row number 10 because that's the previous cell. I commit, press enter, drag the formula to the right, and I have an additional total added. Now let's just test it out. I take this total, press Ctrl X to cut it. Leave this at a couple of rows at the bottom, and I add another product, maybe let's say G, and I add, let's say 200 of value here. Now, because this happens to be the previous cell, as soon as I commit to the formula, the total is going to become 1231. See that? And I can, and the total actually updates. So if you have a spreadsheet, which is where you'd like to institute something which is dynamic ranges or expanding ranges, in a less sophisticated way, you can actually use this particular technique. Not only does this work in the row fashion, which is this particular fashion, flowing from top to bottom, but you can also do it from left to right for the previous column in the same way, and you can actually get it done. All right, 2 tricks down, and let's just actually move over to the third trick. All right, this trick I just learned this trick, I think about a few days ago, from a tweet from Eric Stevenson, if I'm just getting his name right, and he writes a blog, and he actually shares a lot of very, very good Power Query tricks. So if you're listening to this and at any time, Eric, thank you so much for this, and I'm just stealing this away from you. Full credit to you. What is this trick? Let's just say that you have a couple of dates in Excel. And now we actually move over to Power Query tricks. So the next 3 tricks that I'm going to share with you, including this one, are all going to be Power Query tricks. So we have a bunch of dates in Excel. And what I'd like to do is insert 3 columns in here, one for the day, one for the month, and the other one for the year. That's what I'd like to do. Although there is a very simple way of doing that in Power Query, let's just actually find another interesting way of doing the same thing in Power Query. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load this little table inside of Power Query. It's already a table. I'm going to hop over to the data tab and say that I'd like to place this table in Power Query. So I'll just pick up from table range. Power Query window opens up. Let me just increase the size a bit. And what I'm going to do is let's just actually delete this particular change type step. I don't need it as of now. Now, from this particular date column, I'd like to actually apply a transformation and add 3 more columns. One is for the day, the other one for the month, and the other one for the year. I am sure if you have worked enough with dates in Power Query, you know how to do that. First off, I'd like to convert this into a date because I'm trying to work with dates, so I can convert that into a date. I can extract the year, I can extract the month, and of course I can extract the day. Cool, nothing complicated, but you can see that in the due process of extracting year, month, and the day, I have actually inserted how many steps? I have actually inserted 3 steps here to be able to do that: year, month, and the day. Let's just try to actually reduce the number of steps and do it slightly more quickly. So I'm going to delete this particular 3 columns that I have created and try to do that once again. I'm going to now click on the Add Columns tab once again and go over to the Custom column. In the Custom column, I'm actually going to write a very simple custom function, which is called date.toRecord. If you read through this, it says that this function date.toRecord accepts a date as an input. That's part 1. So you can see that we definitely have dates which are going to be the feeder or the input of this particular function. Good. If you read the explanation of the function, it says that, hey, it was actually going to return you a record. That means it's not going to be a single value. It's going to be a record, which you'll have to expand. And that record is going to be containing parts of the date. Now, what do you mean by parts of the date? Parts of the date simply means the day, the month, and the year. Any which ways, I'm just going to feed the date right here into this function, close the bracket, and commit to the formula, press OK. I get a record for sure, and I can actually expand this particular record, and you can see that I get the year, month, and the day. I can click on OK to expand all of them, and I now have this year, month, and the day created slightly differently, and maybe just one more, like one step less than the usual way of actually creating it. If I wanted to, I could also remove the change type step, and I could feed the change type right inside of my function just to kind of reduce one more step. So I can delete that particular step. Now, this is not a date anymore. Because this is not a date, it actually results in error because the data type of the input has to be a date. So I can go over to my function right here, and in my function, I can actually convert this into a date right using a formula. So I can say something like, what was the function? Date.from, and close that. So date.from, this is my sort of a text input, but it is actually a date. So extract the date from this particular input. This entire part gives you a date that actually becomes the feeder to the date.toRecord function. And it works. Just click on OK. This gives you a record once again. And if you expand the record, you get the year, month, and the day. Let's actually close this particular query and move forward with the next trick. All right. Now, while doing a lot of consulting work and for a couple of US clients, I face this a lot. So my laptop and my desktop is set to Indian settings, but the work that I tend to do at times or the US settings, which actually means that I hit a lot of like errors, especially while converting the dates into a proper date format, because in the US, they actually do MMDD format, and in India, we do DDMM format. So here is another very simple data set, which is where we have order date, we have the delivery date, and we have the value. I'm sure if you again have worked with dates enough in Power Query, you know there is an option called change to local, which actually accepts any local format, and you can convert the date or any particular data type to their local format. Let's just see if we can slightly optimize that using the M code. I'm going to feed this particular data into Power Query. So I'll go to data and I'll say from table range, and this data goes into Power Query. All right, let's just zoom this a bit and let's just try to work with this particular data set. Now, you can see that as of now, this is like a change type step has been applied, and you can see that all the 3 columns, which is the order date, the delivery date, and the value has been converted into a text type, because if Power Query tries to convert them into dates, because my keyboard settings are the Indian settings, it would not really apply the correct type, and this would all error out. You want to take a look at an example. If I just convert this order date into the type of text, from text I change that to a date, and if I now commit to this particular function, whatever dates felt good in the Indian format, that means the second part of the month is not beyond 12, it actually accepted as a valid date, and the rest, all of the dates are actually erroring out, which is actually not right. So I have to make sure that the date format is correct, is not reading this date into the Indian format, it's actually reading the date into the American format. That's bad. Now, to be able to solve this particular problem, what generally I have seen people doing is something like this. They'll go to the ABC123 or the ABC, which is the text, and they say that I would like to convert this into a using local, and they'll click right here. They'll say that the data type is going to be not a text, but a date. I select that, and the local or the country is going to be English US. I just go pick up that English US from right here, and I say OK, and this now converts into the correct data type, which is read in the American format, but the output that I get is in the Indian format. Good. Now, one data type has been applied, then they actually do it for the second one. So again, the same thing, date, sorry, go here using local, date, where are you? English US, and say OK. And this also gets converted into the US dates. Now, the one thing that you're going to find is that I have to do 3 column conversions or 3 data type applications of the 3 columns. So one is the order date, the other one is the delivery date, and then finally I'll have to do for some numbers as well, which is nothing but the values. Which simply means that I have to actually create 3 steps. Change type with local, change type with local 1 for the second one, and then I still have to do change type with local with the value as well. What you can actually do is you can actually do that in a single step by taking hint from how the code looks to us on the screen. Now, please take a look. If you take a look at any of the steps that I have applied so far, you can see that it says table.transform column types. It mentions the name of the table. That means on which table are you trying to apply the data type change. So the name of the table is the previous step, which is right here. It says columns do you want to apply the data type change? So I'd like to apply the data type change on the delivery column. To be the usual date, but English US, and that's where you will find the additional part, which is where it applies the local currency setting, which is the English US settings. And then this is the exact same step for this particular column, which is the order date, but you can see that this is actually for English US again, but for the order date column. Now what I'm going to do is instead of creating multiple steps for every single column that I have to do, I'm actually going to pick up this particular little English US culture thing, which is which culture or which regional settings are you trying to apply. I'm going to feed that into a single M code. So let's just actually do that. I'm going to delete this particular step, delete this one as well. And I have just 2 steps as of now, source and change time. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to say that for the first column, let's just format this a bit. Now, if you take a look at this, now what I'm trying to do is there are 3 columns, the order date column, the delivery date column, and the value column. Currently, all of them are text. The 2 first text columns, I'd like to convert this into a date, and the last text column, I'd like to convert this into a number. But once I do that, it actually errors out. So if I just do that into a date, this also converts into a date, and this also converts, sorry, not a date, but a number. It actually errors out because you don't really have the right culture or the right regional settings. Now, the last part of the function, if I just put a comma here and I end up writing that which culture or which regional settings that I'm trying to apply it on, you can actually do all 3 columns in a single go. That means this particular standard change type step, which is the standard change type step, actually changes the type as per certain local settings. So if I just happen to write EN small and US capital with a dash, And if I now commit to the formula with an enter, now this change type that we have been able to apply using the function change is now a local settings on multiple columns rather than just a single column. So you can actually use this particular last input of the transform column types function to apply a regional settings on multiple columns at once. Just the thing that you have to be sure about is that if some columns in your query are applying local settings, maybe a US settings, and the other columns are in a different setting, maybe your own regional settings, then this particular change, which is the EN/US, is going to be applicable on all of these columns, right? So you just have to be careful on that. Rest everything is good. So maybe you'll have to do 2 steps in case there are a bulk of the columns in Indian settings and the bulk of the columns in the American settings, and then this still can be done, but still it reduces the number of steps that you have to actually apply. All right, let's load this. Let's just actually move over to the last one right here. OK, so the story behind the last one is I happen to do a live session on Power Query and Power BI and DAX, which is where people can come in and we can all gather around in a Teams call, and then we can share our learnings, and I can teach some very nifty tactics on DAX and build some fundamentals. And I happen to meet Christian Angel, who also happens to be the leader of the Romania Power BI user group. If you'd like to go check out his meetup as well, pretty good guests over there as well. So he attended the session and he gave me a wonderful trick on Power Query on promoting the headers, especially when you're getting the data from multiple Excel files. Very, very nifty, very, very small change that you'll have to do, but it's very, very powerful. Please take a look. Let's just say that I am opening a folder. Where are you? OK. All right. See that here in this particular folder, I have 3 files that I'm interested in, which is the year 2005 file, year 6 file, and year 7 file. Now these 3 files are nothing but they contain the data of that particular year, and nothing too complicated. And what I want to do is I want to append the data from all the 3 files, and I would like to push the data Excel file. Now I'm sure everybody here is savvy query to be able to do that. I'm just showing you one little optimization trick that you can actually use. So if you actually open the year 2005 file, it contains the data for 2005 and the following columns, the date column, the sales rep column, customer amount, profit, and the region. And all the other files have the same data. That means the only thing that is going to change in the other Excel files is going to be the date, and rest everything remains the same. Obviously, the number of rows can be different, but largely the data remains the same. Date, sales rep, customer, amount, profit, and the region, with the dates being for the following year that the file belongs to. I'm going to close that. I'm going to start to fire up a query that combines the data of all the Excel files. I'm going to show you a couple of approaches. Please take a look. Data tab. Get the data from a file from a folder, and let me just copy and paste the path of the folder right here, and click on open. Now I get to see all the files in that particular folder. I'm not really interested in the book one. I'm just interested in 2005, 6, and 7. So let's just go click on transform data, and let's remove book one and start to combine the data of the files. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to maybe skip this out. I don't really want book one, year 5, year 6, and year 7. And I can click on OK, and this is pretty good. And now let's just convert the content into a table that you can actually read. So what I'm going to do is go to the Add Columns tab and convert the Excel file. So maybe I just don't like to throw jargons, but to be able to help you understand very clearly, what I'm trying to do here is that for Power Query, a binary simply means a file. A text file, a CSV file, any file is called a binary. And for Power Query to be able to read the data of it, you need to convert that into a table. I'm going to write a function that is going to start to consume the data of the Excel file and convert that into a table. That's what I'm trying to do. So I'm just going to go to the Add Columns tab, click on the Custom Column, and I'm going to say that, hey, I have 3 files or 3 binaries. Please convert these binaries, which are nothing but Excel files, into tables so that Power Query can start to read that data. I'm going to start to write a simple function, which is excel.workbook, excel.workbook. And it says that, hey, which is the workbook? Now the workbook has to be fed as a binary, and we have 3 binaries, binary number 1, binary number 2, and binary number 3. And all of these binaries are there in the content column. So let me just feed the content column so that Power Query can read all the 3 binaries. Close that, commit, say OK, and I have 3 tables now, table, table, and table, and this is the data that I have. Now let's just expand these tables. Click on expand, OK, and I get the data. Now all the 3 Excel files have just got 1 sheet. That means the data is there only on sheet number 1. Therefore, you have sheet 1, sheet 1, sheet 1. And if I now take a look at the data right here, you can see that the data is going to be there of that particular sheet. So this is 2005 data. If I take a look at the next sheet, it's going to be 2006. It's going to be 2007. So take a look, 2006 and 2007. All good. The only problem being that if you actually now start to expand the 3 tables, the first row is not going to be considered as a header, but the actual data row, which is incorrect. That means the region should not be the row of the data. It should actually be the header of the data. Same applies to the profit. Same applies to all of these columns that you have right here. How do you do that? The trick that I knew initially was that I can actually promote the headers of the 3 tables that I have. I can promote the headers. How do I do that? I can actually click on the custom column right here. I can perhaps go and I can say that table.promote headers. And table.promote headers is asking you for a table. That means for which table do you want me to promote the headers? And I have the 3 tables right here, which is the table, table, table. All these 3 tables are there in the data tab, in the data column, and I'm just going to feed the data column right here. So where are you, data? Right here. Close that. And commit and say OK. All right. Now the tables have been fed and you can see that the headers have been promoted, and now these tables are good to be expanded. OK, now Christian actually taught me another interesting trick. He said there is no need of writing table.promote headers as a separate step, as a separate column. What you can actually do is use the inbuilt capability of excel.workbook function to promote the headers natively. What do I mean? Please take a look. If I go back to the source step, in the source step, if you take a look at my first step right here, all that I have connected to a particular folder, and in that I then move ahead and I filter book 1, and I'm now only taking a look at 3 Excel files. Now remember what I told about the binary. To be able to read the data of the binary, you need to convert the binary into a table to be able to read the data of it. The function that we used to pull the data off the binary and convert it into a table was excel.workbook. If you don't remember, I actually picked up the content column and I fed the content column in a custom function or a custom column, and this is where I read excel.workbook, and I fed the content column, which is this particular column, and then I fed the 3 binaries off in this particular function. Now here's the trick. One of the hidden parts of the function is this particular part, which is use headers as any. If you don't feed into this particular part, it doesn't really consider the first row of the data as headers. But if you actually feed the second part of this function, which is actually as true, that means do consider the first row as headers. All the data set, TRUE, all the sheets in Excel file could have multiple sheets, all the sheets and the data of the sheets of that data, the first row is actually going to be considered as the header of the data. So now with this little change that I have done, please take a look at how does the query change, and I get rid of the table.promote header step. So I'm just gonna maybe commit to this particular function. I still get a table, and you can see that if I just expand this particular table, I still get to see data table right here. And if I now take a look at the preview of this particular table, what you're going to find is that the header of sheet number 1 came pre-promoted. There was no need to write the function or write any function to be able to promote the headers. So this is pre-promoted, this is pre-promoted, this is pre-promoted, all because of that little true that we added off in that particular excel.workbook function. And now this part that we have written, which is table.promote headers, is not needed, and we can just get rid of this particular stuff. So if you take a look at this, this is nothing but the wrong, like the actual data being promoted to the headers, which is not right. So now you are good to go, and you can actually combine the data of this particular 3 tables, and you're good to go. So that was the little trick that I want to share, which is promoting of the headers without actually writing that function table.promote headers. And we can just close and load the data into the Excel file that we have, and that's it. Okay, I was thinking I would not be able to finish in time, but I'm glad that I was able to finish in time, and we have like 10 odd minutes for questions if you have any.
Wow, thanks a lot. This is really amazing. You know, the new angles you brought to some common problems, but that no one ever thought of trying to do another way.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot. Questions from people in the house? Anyone has a question to ask? Okay, I see Fanny was sharing that there's another session after this. For any questions in the house while... Okay, let me see. All right, so I'm going to start asking. I have questions actually.
Please.
So apart from those 2 questions I mentioned, by the way, I think Kristen Angel, is it the same? Can you look in the chat box? Is it the same Kristen Angel?
Yeah.
You say, no?
Yeah,
Great.
Christian Angel, that's right. He's the one.
Oh,
so
cool.
Christian, hey buddy, what's up?
Thanks. So one question I have is, how do you keep learning all these things? What's your trick? How do you ensure you're able to keep abreast of tricks are difficult to come across because you have to go out of your way. It's not like I'm clicking on the menu and I'm seeing it exactly that way. And for you, it seems like you found a pattern that keeps working consistently for you to be abreast of what's new. You know, sometimes like just this 1 hour session, you've mentioned like 4 people whom you've learned a few tricks from, and then there are some that I'm sure you came across yourself. So how do you get to use Excel beyond what's there on the menu side? What's your approach that makes you being aware of all these other ways to do things?
So my answer is pretty unconventional. If you are under the gun of learning a lot of tricks in Excel and that's what you think is going to be a North Star, then I would just strongly suggest that you relax and just don't run a lot behind the tricks. There are like, you cannot really chase all the tricks in the world because there are far too many that you can actually learn, or some tricks are, you know, pretty complicated and you would probably not get the first time. The thing that I tend to do, and I tend to do a lot, is solve problems with data, and that is my number 1 dose of playing around with data and Excel and just learning the stuff that I tend to do with data. So other than that, whatever time I have left over with, I have a few, you know, sources that I actually go and read about, some Twitter followers that some people that I follow on Twitter, and I read about their stuff. And other than that, I just happen to solve a lot of problems, and that's the only thing that I suggest people to do. Just solve more problems. If you solve more problems, you will eventually be able to solve even more problems, and then, you know, in turn learn a few tricks as well. So.
Okay, great. So there's one I want to ask you, and I hope the answer is yes. Otherwise, you have to make the answer yes. So I hope you're paying to the person whom you got the name Goodly from.
That's my father, actually.
Yeah, then you also wrote about how you called your mom, and you know, when you were wanting to. Let me see. I'm reading on the blog anyway, but I hope you're paying for using the name.
I'm not actually. I'm just shameless about that. So this was long while ago. and I was still working. And so Goodly actually, I started along with a friend of mine, and we thought that we could probably provide some financial modeling consulting, because that is what we were doing at that particular time for a boutique investment bank back in India. So we thought we could provide financial modeling consulting to a lot of people and teach the skill in India. And I'd like to think that I was okay at it, doing a lot of financial modeling throughout the day job. And we got an assignment, and then the client asked us to bill us. Okay, send me your bill. And I said, okay, what do I write in the bill? So then I called my mother and I said, hey mom, you know what? I'm just starting this thing. I don't even know if I'm just going to continue with this or not. So probably can I just make the invoice in name of Goodly, if you're okay with that? You can be the signing authority for a while, because I can't really be the owner of the company and also have a day job. And yeah, that's it. So she said, okay, yeah, go ahead. No fuss about it. So yeah, that is how Goodly was born. And yeah, I got some money. Then I did a few more projects, and then I saved some money to kind of run for about a year without having to have a day job. And that's the time when I quit and I started Goodly. So yeah.
Great. Also trying to share so people can also benefit from some of your other resources that you've made available. So now I'm going to ask any question from anyone in the house before I ask the last two questions we ask all guests. I see some big people in the house today. I see Federico. I see Brian. I see
Hey Brian, good to
Kristen.
see you again.
See some other people I do not know their
Chandeep.
names, but just mentioning the ones that I like to
Night.
bring. Okay.
Bye.
So if you have any question, please feel free to interrupt me, but I am going to go ahead with the questions I have planned. And so, Chandeep, here we are with one of the main questions we like to ask every new guest we have, which is, so how did you get into this whole data space, this Excel, Power Query, and what you do right now? So what led you to this present career choice, and it looks like maybe you chose it or it chose you and you ended up choosing it back. So let's hear the story.
I don't like schedule. If somebody asked me that, why are you self-employed? That would be my answer. I don't like schedule. I'd like to do whatever I want, whenever I want. Is my answer, like one word answer. Now, it so happened that when I was working in investment banking as a job is a pretty tight job, and you're supposed to work long hours. And I totally hated that. And on the weekends, I was making some side income by teaching people some stuff with Excel and other stuff. And I thought, there was one day I was thinking about it. I make a quarter of what I make in a month through the side gig. If I went full time, I could probably make all of it, and I could just do, like, I could have a lot of free time in my hand. So we actually, like, I came along with my friend because I did not really have the guts to go alone. So I said, hey buddy, you know what? Let's just do this. And we actually started to pick up one assignment, and then we picked up another one, and so I quickly collected some, like, by burning myself out over about a month or a 2 month process. I collected some money so that I can actually survive for about a year without working. If I led a very, very frugal life, I could survive for 1 year. Even if I did not make any money trying to run Goodly. And I had a plan B that I could probably teach some kids some tuition, some math, and some science. So I had that plan B, and I could just make some pennies by that as well. But thankfully, the plan worked out. So essentially, if you ask me that, did I have a love for Excel and love of working with data? I just wanted to have a free schedule. Like, that's all that I wanted to do. And it was one of the things that I was, kind of good at. So I thought, let's just actually pick up this thing, and I started to roll with it. So that was the very, very initial days of the seed being planted and moving towards self-employment. And very, very largely, I still think that the work that I have is more of a lifestyle than actually like a proper business. So I've stayed very, very lean. I don't have like a lot of employees. I don't have any overheads on me. And whenever I feel like working, I work, and whenever I feel not like working, I don't work. So yeah, that has been what it has been. But generally speaking, since the time I started learning Power BI and Power Query to solve more sophisticated problems and that sort of stuff, I've started to like at least what I do. Yeah, so this is what it has been. So if you ask me that, how did I land up here? I just wanted to be free. That's the simple answer to that question.
And it seems you're achieving it, because when you said you choose the work you want, you choose when you want to work, when you don't. That's something that I wish I can say. I also followed a similar path to what you did. I said I thought I could save. I was doing something and I was getting enough money part-time that I felt if I was doing it full-time, if I was doing this full-time, then I would make as much as I'm earning salary. And when I went into it the first year, it was when I was going to get broke at the end of the first year that my first income came in. So it was like God was okay. Let's pity him. Let's let something come in when I was on my last naira. We spent naira here. So I think you had the better one than me then. So the last question is, what advice do you have for people who also would like to come into this data analysis space? I know it's evolving, but what will you advise them to do? How should they go about it?
I just have one advice. This comes out of my experience of providing some consulting to the companies that I work for. Now, out of luck, I've had the opportunity of meeting some very profound professionals, CFOs and CEOs of decent sized companies, pretty large companies, and I've worked personally with them to solve some of their challenging data problems using Power BI. Now, when it comes to data analytics, there can be a lot of ways of actually analyzing data. It could be a simple pen and paper. I mean, you could just pick up a pen and paper and you can start crunching numbers on that. It could actually be some spreadsheet work, some Google Sheets work, some sophisticated Power BI, Tableau work, and even more sophisticated than that, some Python coding and that sort of stuff. My one advice to people is that don't get hung up with the tool. The tools are just going to come and go. Please have the larger picture in mind. It's very, very important to have a bigger picture in mind as to what problem that you're trying to solve, and have your focus on solving the problem more than just the tool. So when you're actually learning the tool, or any tool, Excel, Power BI, if you learn it in the context of the problem that you're trying to solve, it helps you understand what the business is going through so much better that your pitch about yourself as an employee or as a consultant becomes 10x more powerful. So just have the bigger picture in mind and learn these tools in the context of solving a problem rather than just meaningfully rather than just learning functions after functions after functions, which has no purpose at all.
Wow. Okay. That's a very direct one. And maybe just to ask, how do you go about you improving? I know it's supposed to be 2 questions, but this is your last answer.
Sure. That's fine.
Can you share your own learning style? How do you go about improving yourself? What's the style you use in keeping abreast of all that is evolving in this space and deciding?
So one thing.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, go ahead. If you want to say more, I can just answer.
I wanted to sneak in deciding when to jump from one tool to the other, in case maybe one tool is coming to end of life and you think, oh, this is where the new trend is. How do you manage all of that?
So one thing that I tend to do is that I try to chase the problems rather than actually learning the newest feature that is up in there. And by doing that, I try to have the end in the mind. So let's just say that I'm working on a consulting work or trying to solve a problem. I know that the solution actually looks like this, and I have to work backwards from that particular problem to get to the solution, to build the solution. And then in the process of solving the particular problem, I will just go ahead and learn whatever it takes to build the solution for the problem. And that's how I learn. So rather than actually chasing features, I try to chase the solutions of the problems. And if I'm interested in like solving the problem, whether I know how to solve it or not, I will tend to learn whatever comes in the way to be able to actually meaningfully solve the problem. Either in the short run or in the long run, that's how I actually go about trying to learn anything, which actually helps me to connect with businesses more uh, than anything actually else. So that's what my learning approach is. I try not to get uh, drawn away by features. I just try to solve the problems and try to learn everything that comes in the way of solving those problems. That's what I tend to do. And once the problem is done, I just relax. That's it. I'm done with my learning.
Great, great. Thanks a lot. And I see people also sharing their appreciation for these extra tips. So it's more like there was the tips originally you had planned, and then there's this career tips and continuous development tips. So we are very grateful for you, making time out for us, and we also are grateful to everyone who has been part of this session. And we have come to the end. And just to announce to you, in case you're interested in Power BI, in exactly 1 hour's time, we're going to have another one on Power BI. So I will just put the link for those who are interested. And this is where we wrap today's session. I'm supposed to share, can you share the feedback form? So those who want to just share their comments about the session and suggestions about who we should bring can just let us know. So can you quickly, let me see if I can do that before I end the session. I think I still have a slide that has that. Sorry for that. Just want to quickly. Okay, great. He's done that. So thank you to everyone as we have come to the end of this session. And we are very grateful for your time. And especially we appreciate Chandeep for his for making out time for us and for the power packed session. It's a lot you've compressed into 1 hour for us. And if not for my questions that overran, you are like exactly
sure.
dot of the hour. So thank you very much. Apologies to everyone who got pushed to the wrong meeting. I think you also had a problem, Chandeep. You said you went into one other meeting and there was nobody there until you realized that it was supposed to be this one. So we're going to look into what caused that and fixed it from meetup.com site. So thank you to everyone, and they have a wonderful week ahead. Have a wonderful rest of the day. So bye. Thank you, Dr. Ratika. I see
Thanks,
you.
Michael.
Keep joining us. Yeah, thanks, Chandeep. Bye to everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.